And then obsessing on gaming even when not playing, like me lying in bed at night worrying about my cavalry on the right flank. You know, I would think about it even when I was. So video game addictions cuts across socioeconomic, religious, all different areas of society. I've had college professors, Catholic priests, big money lawyers, doctors, plumbers, auto workers, whatever. I've had the whole range of people. Please, next. So basically, what we talk about in terms of addiction is a persistent and compulsive dependence. I kind of need it. It seems like I need my game. I can't just put it to the side. Now, there is a caveat. Some people like me can binge for a long time and get temporarily satiated, and then we can go for 3, 4, 5 weeks, only to launch eventually into another binge. Okay? We already talked about that, so we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so I have a friend who quit his job and cashed in his 401k because he was pretty sure he was going pro. And so, I'm not kidding, with the naivete that a 10-year-old boy thinks he's going to be the quarterback for, the University of Michigan Wolverines, he thought he was going pro and he was going to make like $300,000 a year being a professional video gamer. He had a variety of games that he was good at, and he gamed all the time. After 9 months, suffice it to say, he's part of the mortgage crisis now. So that's financial ruin. I had a guy that played a game, Band of Brothers. He was playing as a member of the 101st Airborne Division, and he was in Bastogne, like in World War II. And he was fighting in the bombed-out rubble of Bastogne as his marriage crumbled around him. But he didn't bother taking care of the marriage. He just avoided that. So there again, you hear that the theme, avoidance. There's another theme that a lot of us video game folks, we're great avoiders. Don't really know exactly where that comes from, but that tends to be. And finally, I got to tell you that once you got somebody that's whether you want to define it as an excessive player, an addictive player, once it takes root, it's very hard to break that hold over a person. Okay, I'm starting to sense that there are some questions. So let's just take a pause for a second, and let me take some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if it's starting to take root, and it has, and it's done, it's already done that to my daughter, but do you think that type of person would have been doing that anyways? They would go for an addiction in their life? Are they predisposed?
I tend to think that, and I think the literature supports this, that there is a predisposition towards addiction. ADHDers certainly have a demonstrated predisposition towards addiction. So, absolutely. And she's not ADHDer, you're saying?
Well, no, she has a lot of stuff going on. Even before this, she was diagnosed as a young child as stubborn, oppositional defiant, depressed, and then she started playing.
Right.
And she is extremely bright. But the other thing that she was diagnosed is auditory processing disorder.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, she barely uses a phone. I got her a cell phone in the 4th grade because I knew she'd never use it, and she doesn't because it's what, who, what.
Right.
But this is immediate. I mean, that's one of the things. And she doesn't socialize because it's too much work if she's in a room full of people. So this is her social.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's really tough, because that's her. That's her whole thing. So she's not using it right now, but I told her I was coming to this conference.
All right. Well, we're going
to. She has some not so nice things to say about you.
Well, have her call me.
I will.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Have her instant message me. Yes.
Doesn't do that.
One of the things I found in having college students as counseling clients who were gaming addicted was very often before they became game addicts, they had a history growing up of hyper-focusing on things to the extent that they were almost classic patterns for that characteristic of ADHD.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that typically there were comorbidities involved with their behaviors in addition to the ADHD, and often they were self-medicating. these were the ones who typically were not on a pharmacological regimen.
Right.
They would either were heavy smokers or they were heavy pop drinkers that had a lot of caffeine content in them. And so I think there's a complex of behaviors.
There certainly is.
That very often when we're looking at treatment programs require pretty careful diagnosis, because sometimes you can unlock a pattern of behaviors that can help with resolving the difficulties. And I think I'm particularly recalling one situation of an individual who in fact was dealing with bipolar disorders, and the triggers were whenever it was a down period, the addiction spiked because it was an escape and it was a way of coping with feeling of depression. I'm wondering, have you seen some of those dynamics?
Well, absolutely. And one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of your World of Warcrafters, for example, and EverQuest, which people call EverCrack, a lot of those people are pot users, and they also use massive doses of caffeine, whether it's caffeine pills or a lot of them like Red Bulls, and they use other substances to augment the escape from reality. Absolutely. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of bipolar people at my gaming groups, and they have really the hardest time. And a lot of the people that become your what I call your hardcore gaming addicts, they usually had a whole host of behavioral issues leading up to that may not have been treated and diagnosed properly. And so in many cases, this gentleman is right, and you're also, with your daughter, that it's not like, okay, we're going to stop the video games and everything is going to be okay. But again, it goes back to that video gaming is an escape. It's an immediate, freely available reward. I mean, you don't have to go down to your corner store. You don't have to go down to 8 in Wyoming. It's right there. And so a lot of these people, whether they have comorbidities such as ADHD or bipolar or oppositional defiant disorder, they're using video games to escape rather than deal with their problems. And I got to tell you, just a footnote on what this gentleman says, that a lot of the bipolar folks that have made their way to me, it's a real hard row to hoe for those folks. It's a real hard row to hoe. So, yes, sir.
We have a 13-year-old boy that clearly meets all of your questions there.
Yeah.
Being addicted, and at times for punishment for him would be to lose his gaming system.
Sure.
And it's at those times that he's gone as far as saying that he doesn't want to live.
Right.
And so we've gotten to the point where we almost can't take it away anymore, but I don't know how to deal with it.
Well, and I'm going to go over a plan, and that and it's in your books too, and it's just basically a very abridged version. But I tend to find, and of course there's a lot of asterisks there about because there's not just one answer that fits all. But I tend to find that if you have a kid with that predisposition towards video games, and we're going to talk about this more, a positively oriented program is better. Say, well, here are the things you got to do, and guess what? If you do those, this is how much video game time you get for each activity. And then rather than be an administrator of punishments, you can get out of that business and you can become a cheerleader. Like, come on, let's get that homework done. Your mom, if you take a 30-minute bike ride, you get 30 minutes on the game. Come on, and I'll play with you. We're going to talk about that too. But there are different approaches, and I tend to think with this particular issue, most often parents are better off coming up with a behavioral program that rewards rewards positive behaviors rather than punishes negative ones. So
Playtime and doesn't take it away. Allows.
Right, and allowing for lots of different, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but allowing for lots of different opportunities to earn game time. And you got to flip it.